Welcome back to the American Experiment Podcast. Kathryn Johnson, what do we have on the docket today?
We have some good stories for you guys today. We have Walz returning to his roots last week at Farm Fest. I'm sorry, I should have put that in air quotes. Returning to his roots last week at Farm Fest. Then we're going to talk about some marijuana mayhem in Albert Lee, of all places. We'll get into that. And then on the back half, we talked to John Hinderaker about Trump's plan for crime in D.C. And is Trump an authoritarian, like Tim Walz claims? All that and more. We have our expert of many things, all things, Bill Walsh, with us today. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you for allowing me to be here, but I hope I'm not put out there as an expert on marijuana, because I don't know a lot about it. I don't know a lot about it.
You're an expert on many things, including and not
marijuana
limited to.
regulations.
Yes. For our purposes today, you are an expert. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, so Walz was at Farm Fest. This was his triumphant return to the agriculture event. Bill, for our listeners who don't know what Farm Fest is, explain it to us.
Yeah, it's a 3-day agriculture expo in southern Minnesota. It's kind of grown over the years. So just think trade show in the ag business. And there's trade shows like this around the state. There's a few more, but this is the big one. It's always held in southern Minnesota. Tractors everywhere, the newest technology, so farmers come and can see what's new for the farm, agribusiness. But it's also a real political thing, and it's kind of grown over time. But you can go back in the history of state elections, Farm Fest debates. They've always had a good debate, usually the first debate in a governor's race, including the last one. A lot of panels, like there's a panel of congressmen and women the first day of Farm Fest. So it's a real political place. It's a real place to check out politics, see how people are feeling. I will say that, in recent years, everybody knows rural Minnesota has gone more red, more conservative, more Republican. So the Farm Fest audience is very conservative now. It's not even 50-50. It's really, pro-business, pro-agribusiness, but also just conservative. So it's not been a friendly place for Tim Walz, to put it bluntly. He's been booed there recently. Just showing up to give a speech as governor, he's been booed.
Yeah, I mean, last time he was
heckled.
there, it was like right after he was announced as the VP nomination, right, for Kamala?
Yep, and he's been booed. I had a farmer come to our booth because we're at Farm Fest. American Experiment has a booth there, and we have great conversations and talk about what we do, and mostly in energy policy. That's kind of where we connect with farmers the most, but also education and everything. And I had a farmer come to the table and say that when he was there last year, he stood up and yelled at the governor that, you let Minneapolis burn down, you ruined our great city.
Yeah.
Just in the middle of his speech. I mean, see, these guys it's a little bit hostile for him in greater Minnesota. You can see that electorally, and it gets shown when he comes to Farm Fest.
And it's interesting given his kind of public persona when it came to being on the campaign trail with Kamala, because one of the things they really liked about Tim Walz, I think, was that sort of like rural thing he tried to have going on. They had those camo hats, remember? And then, when he actually goes to Farm Fest, and has to debate Scott Jensen, the crowd was not on his side, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and can you blame them? I mean, he did try to put out this like man of the people, rural personality, camo hat, Coach Tim Walz. That was the persona he was cultivating. And then he would turn around at home in Minnesota and say, there's just rocks and cows out there. Who cares about those people? I mean, these people at Farm Fest are those people that he claims to hate because they're all Trump supporters.
Yeah, he's kind of in conflict with his own past because he grew up on a farm. He's legit. I mean, he grew up on a farm. His family's a farmer, not in Minnesota, but he grew up on a farm. He represented farm country in Congress. Certainly, the first district in Minnesota is mostly rural, mostly agricultural, including, I don't know, it used to be when he was there, but Farm Fest is the location. I think it's in the 7th congressional, but I think it used to be in the 5th or the 1st. I'm sorry, southern Minnesota. So, but I think as a politician, he wants to be, in with the cool kids, the cool liberal kids, like his Lieutenant Governor Flanagan and the teachers union. I mean, ultimately, Tim Walz is a union teacher. That's who he really is. He's not a farmer. I mean, he grew up on the farm, But I think if you asked him or if you really looked into his soul, he's a union teacher. And so that comes through, and farmers in Minnesota see that. They also see the policies. They see what he did in COVID. He shuts down the state, and a lot of these folks didn't shut down with him. They just went on their daily lives, did not appreciate the authoritarianism of the COVID shutdowns. They do not like what he's done or not done in Minneapolis with the riots. And they don't like some of the ag policy, and certainly don't like the tax and spend. And that gets to, making these guys are small business owners. They run actually large businesses, a lot of them, in agribusiness, and they see Walz as a guy who taxes and spends. And even if we can, he said, I think maybe says in the article, but that you're going to talk about, that agriculture at the Capitol is somewhat bipartisan. I mean, it's the first bill that's always done in the budget process. It's the easiest to come to agreement on because the legislature generally supports agriculture. But even having said that, they're not for Walz.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing him and his posse in everything they do and the policies they push at the Capitol. Like you were saying, all the cool liberal kids, they completely look down on the people who are out there farming and providing food for our state. They completely look down on them. They're rocks and cows. I mean, I think he's called Trump supporters Nazis at one point. Mm-hmm. And yet then he tries to turn around and say, well, agriculture is bipartisan. I'm on your side.
I'm one of you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And they can sense that. And that's why he's not popular out there.
You touched on it too with the dress. And I have this rant on Tim Walz for years. He's come to Farm Fest every year. And every year he tries to look more like a farmer. And I tell you, one of these years he's going to literally roll around in the dirt before he gets there.
The year I was there, he was fairly dirty.
Yeah. I mean, he wore a crazy, horrible T-shirt to the debate. And I think this year he's wearing a T-shirt and a ball cap.
Jeans,
I
boots.
want to look like a farmer. I'm one of you. I'm authentic. It's like, well, it gets to be silly.
Yeah.
You're the governor. I mean, you shouldn't wear a suit to Farm Fest. Don't get me wrong. That would equally stand out. And politicians over the years, there's been people in Congress that have worn heels to Farm Fest and gotten mocked. And then you wear a tie, you get mocked.
That'd be a hard place to dress for politically.
Right,
I get it.
Yeah. You're from the cities and you go to a Farm Fest, call a friend who's a farmer and say, how should I dress? Because you will get mocked. But Walz takes it to the extreme. He does this at the state fair too. I'm one of the people.
Does it everywhere. Yeah, that's who he is.
If it was just what he's wearing that day, maybe, but I think it's all calculated. It's all part of the image. And how do I look like a farmer? It's like, well, why do you have to think about that? You actually grew up on a farm. What are you wearing today? You're the governor of the state of Minnesota. A polo maybe with your name on it or something or anyway.
No name on it. No name on it. But that's a strong stance of mine.
I just tell you, I was at Farm Fest the day he was there. I was there. It was Wednesday. It was day 2 or day 1. I can't remember. Anyway, I was there the day he was there, and I was in the Farm Bureau tent having a pork chop. They have a great pork chop feed there at the Farm Bureau tent.
Oh, I have a rant on that too. Minnesota the pork chop thing is a little weird.
No, it's not.
Put them. It's just they're like, oh, do you want a pork chop on a stick? Yeah. And I was like, no, probably not. Like, I don't want to just bite into a pork chop. Like, oh, great, we have a pork chop sandwich. I'm like, that sounds great. I want that. It's just 2 pieces of bread and then a pork chop. I'm just biting into a pork chop.
Well, there's barbecue sauce available.
I didn't see it. I'm not made for Farm Fest, but I don't
Clearly.
get the pork chop thing. Really,
the point is, it's a promotion of one of the.
You must hate the turkey leg on a stick at the Renaissance Festival.
I would never.
I'm sorry, is that mud? Okay, I'm sorry.
Farm Bureau tent promoting Minnesota pork producers. So you've got some of the best pork producers in the country here producing the food for the world, and they're showing off their really good cuts. These are really good pork chops, and you put them on a stick, you put some barbecue sauce, and you eat it at Farm Fest. You also get a little ice cream treat with that meal. It's the greatest. Anyway, I'm there.
Oh, yes. You do get that.
And hanging out with folks that I happen to know from around the state and Farm Bureau. And somebody says to me, one of the guys on the board says, yeah, the governor's coming to the Farm Bureau tent in like 15 minutes. I'm like, wow, really? Not advertised, not announced. There's a whole schedule, and if he wanted to come to Farm Fest, they would have given him the big tent and put an audience together, put a panel together. Absolutely. This is all on the QT, not part of his official schedule. And sure enough, a few minutes later, he's there. And so he's just really low-key in Farm Fest. It was very interesting. So he's meeting with the board. This friend I was talking to was a board member of Farm Bureau. They were all kind of out of a stand-up meeting behind the tent over by where they were grilling the pork chops. I ran over and took a picture, put it on Twitter. But it's like, there he is, just unassuming, standing there just talking with a very select group, not, I mean, this friend of mine was not a big supporter of his, but wasn't going to go be rude, but he has an opportunity to give some messaging. Hey, here's what we need in farming. So that was kind of interesting, I thought. And he did end up in the tent, the big tent, and he did get the microphone and address a very small group, not scheduled, not planned. I don't know if he got booed or not. I didn't see him speak. But that's just kind of interesting that the guy who's governor really should go into Farm Fest, as a big official thing, and they should fill the tent. Everybody would have gone and said, "Oh, the governor's speaking. Let's go listen." But he would have got booed.
Yeah. Do you think that this was like just a last minute decision he made to go? So that's why they didn't publicize it very much, or do you think that was intentional and he was trying to slip in kind of under the radar?
No,
so
I
he
think
could say he could go. But you're not going to get a big crowd there expecting him ready to rip on him.
He gets what he wants out of it, which is, I was at Farm Fest. I'm a man of the people.
Yeah.
I'm pro-agriculture. I grew up on a farm. And it was a great day for me at Farm Fest.
Yeah, which is basically the piece that the Star Tribune wrote, by the way. But we'll get to that in a second.
Okay, well, that's exactly. I think it's calculated, absolutely.
Yeah.
Why would any governor go somewhere without publicizing it and getting, especially a massive public event like Farm Fest?
Didn't
Why would you
publicize
ever
it,
low
but
key that?
brought with the Star Tribune photographer to follow him around.
Well, yeah, they have a press shop and they selectively do that. And if you're going to get an exclusive, you're not going to tell anybody. It's a good story for the Star Tribune.
Yeah, they were very complimentary, I would say, the Star Tribune was. Which is, again, my little rant about that is, they're working so hard, that paper is, to position themselves as, the Minnesota Star Tribune. They've got a greater Minnesota, rural correspondent now who, hates ag anyway. We've talked about that before, but okay, whatever. And then every article they put out like this, it's just a glowing review of Walz's appearance at Farm Fest. They're quoting almost exclusively the political aides that were there with him, saying, rural Minnesotans, farmers at Farm Fest, they just don't agree with Walz. They don't like Walz because politics has gotten so polarized, and they are misinformed about his handling of COVID. They're misinformed about the George Floyd riots. And that's why they don't like him. He's really a man of the people. He's very bipartisan. And this is the story they run. It's ridiculous. They make a point of saying, he was booed a couple years ago. This year, he got a round of applause. And it's like, okay.
No, it's it. That's exactly it. It's the both sides-ism of they don't like him because politics in general has gotten so divisive and people are spending too much time on social media. That's what it says. No, farmers don't like him because Governor Walz and his administration has been bad for small businesses. It's been bad for families. It's been bad for farmers. And they know that, and they don't like him because of that. They're not stupid. They're doing an incredibly important job for our people, for our state and our country. And he doesn't respect them for that. He creates policies that make their lives and their jobs harder.
Yeah, it feels like the whole angle of this piece is, they're trying to tie his unpopularity directly to Trump at the national level. They say that in the story. And that's such a cop-out. He's unpopular with them, exactly as you're saying, because he's been bad for them. It's not because they're misinformed or they love Donald Trump as a president. It's so frustrating to see. So you disagree with this Star Tribune assessment of his Farm Fest?
Well, yeah, I already
appearance.
said it. I mean, we already talked about it. It's issues.
Yeah.
These are Minnesotans and they're small business owners.
Yeah.
And ag policy has not been good because there's a struggle with liberals in ag policy because of the environment, regulations, the over-regulation of agriculture. We heard that at our booth a lot. Just all the regulations that people have to go through. One farmer came up to me and talked to me about, he goes to his father-in-law's lake place and watches the guy spread fertilizer all over the grass. And he says, well, are you worried about runoff in the lake? No, that's no good. And what are you doing with the bucket when you're done? I throw it in the trash. And he goes, yeah, none of that would be allowed on my farm. Not, but it's like the over-regulation of farming as an industry and the attack on agriculture in the state led by people like Tim Walz. So they know what that's why they don't like him.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Any final Farm Fest thoughts before we move on, Kathryn?
No, I'm sorry to the pork chop people. I know it's like a great national treasure or state treasure or whatever. It's just not for me. And then I can't breathe at Farm Fest either. I have an allergy thing. I'm not a city person. I'm not a farm person. I'm just too.
You got a lot of stuff going on.
I know, exactly.
We can man the Farm Fest booth for American Experiment without you. So you're good. You're good.
You're allowed to breathe.
I'm sad to hear I'm not needed, but it's probably for the best. Okay, the story that I pulled I think is very interesting. Is mostly led by Elephant News over the past week. There's a couple parts to this, and then I want to get your take on it, Bill, as a city council member yourself, because that's a big element of this. So all of this went down in Albert Lea. Basically, Minnesota just handed one of its first recreational cannabis licenses to Jacob Schlichter, owner of the Smoking Tree in Albert Lea. And basically, while they were waiting in Albert Lea to vote on whether or not he should get one of these licenses, the Office of Cannabis Management, OCM, the state cannabis office had already approved his license. And so Albert Lea had naturally thought it would be fine to approve his license until Alpha News came out with a background check on this Jacob Schlichter. And his record includes a charge for helping a teenage girl he was allegedly having sex with run away, repeated probation violations, and a trail of bizarre lawsuits. In 2016, at age 20, Schlichter was charged with felony deprivation of parental rights after he drove a 16-year-old girl from Texas, whom he had first met online when she was 12.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
So, these background checks, said the Office of Cannabis Management, they do happen, but his background was fine. They said it came up fine. That wasn't enough to mean he should not get a license. So then Albert Lea, thinks, maybe we actually shouldn't approve this guy's license, because along with that, there was he was posting a lot of things online. He went on to make some threats towards the people who were reporting this story at Alpha News and in Albert Lea. And they thought maybe we shouldn't approve his license. But of course, what comes up is this legal question. And the legal question has to do with how many cannabis licenses that cities have to approve. Am I saying that right, Bill?
Yep, right on.
Because Albert Lea, and this is determined by their population, needs to allow 2 places that sell cannabis, 2 places that get the cannabis license, no matter what. This is state law now. And so if they deny this guy's license, he potentially would have a legal argument and could sue Albert Lea, correct?
Right. 1 per 12,500 population. So if they have around 26,000 or more, they would have to allow 2. They actually don't approve licenses. So what Albert Lea City Council did, they can't even do. So you say they approved they denied the license. Mm-hmm. There's not a provision for a city to deny a license. The state gives out the licenses. The city just signs off on is the business. The city can do zoning, basically. We can say, where is the business going to go? That's what the city has some power over. And so Albert Lea could say we want them here, here, and here with some limits. There's buffer zones around schools. Keep away from schools, daycare centers, things like that. So the city can determine that. So the state gets the licensee from this Schlichter guy. They call Albert Lea, or they send it to him. Is this guy? Is his location fit your zoning? That's all the city has power over. They can say yes or no. It fits our zoning code, and they sign off on that, which they presumably did. I think he's in the right place in terms of location. That's it. He's got a license. And so they just voted no. And they just said, we're voting no on the license. And what essentially it did is it stalled a little bit. And then in the meantime, 2 other licensees were approved by the state that fit Albert Lea's zoning that they approved by saying that. And those are going to be the 2.
Yeah.
So if you can limit, the state gave them a chance to limit it to 2, 1 per 12,500. You don't have to, but you can. They did. Also, where do they go? Zoning. Those 2. So now those 2 are the ones that grab those 2 licenses. Now they're full. Now they don't have to allow anymore. Now I think this guy might have a legal case to say that you illegally voted to deny me, even though I met the criteria. And in the meantime, these other 2 came in and I lost my position. I think he's going to have a good case in court because the legislature did not give cities the power to say no to marijuana in their cities. And all through the process in the legislation, they said, we should treat marijuana like alcohol. Whenever we said, hey, marijuana is bad, it's addictive, so is alcohol. It's going to cause lots of societal problems. Well, look at alcohol. We should treat them the same. But they didn't, because the cities have a lot more control over alcohol and licensing than we do. You can be a dry city. You don't have to have alcohol. You can have a muni and do it yourself.
Yeah.
But they did not give cities the power now over marijuana they would do with alcohol. So there is not a lot of control here. Albert Lea's being bold. I think they're probably going to lose. I'm not a lawyer, but this stall thing they did by denying them, they had no ability to deny the license, only the zoning. And then in the meantime, they got 2 others in there. We'll see if the guy sues or not. But it is, and the other piece you got at is, why would the state allow this guy to get a license?
Right. Yeah.
because the legislation not only allows it, it encourages licenses to go first to people that have been historically disadvantaged by these horrible marijuana laws in our country. And so that gets into this very, I think, poor lawmaking over, well, who qualifies as someone that's been disadvantaged by the marijuana industry. And so
that feels,
they call it a social equity cannabis license.
Yes. So they went out of their way to find people like this to reward with licenses to right wrongs that have been done in the past. And the process is what you're going to get. It's terrible lawmaking.
So from a, state government standpoint, is there any hope for reform in this licensing system that they've set up? Because this seems ridiculous to me. As you're saying, like, cities can't control it the way they can control alcohol. That seems like a massive flaw.
I mean, with the current makeup of the legislature, I'd say no. I mean, there's obviously an election in 2026 and the legislature can change. The folks there's a lot of work to get this piece of legislation through, and they're very stubborn. They're just like, we passed it. It's the way it is. We're not changing it. We're not going back. Now they've changed a little bit. They've already increased the tax, I think. It's a very high tax on marijuana in Minnesota, which is going to embolden the black market. So there's a lot of, we're going to be watching this and talking about it for many years. I mean, so yes, eventually, look, every year at the Capitol, there's a liquor bill. I mean, we revisit liquor licensing and liquor law almost every year.
Really?
Yeah. So this will be part of that. It'll be the marijuana bill, tweaks, changes. All of this will be, yes, eventually
that gives me some
we'll get
hope.
to that.
That's good. That's good.
Well,
or there could be a movement to get rid of it completely, or we'll see.
Okay, sorry. The whole rollout of this thing is crazy because the other thing that they did, and one of the business owners mentions this that's now been approved to set up a cannabis shop in Albert Lea, is that they have to get all of their cannabis from the tribes. They actually aren't allowed yet to grow their own marijuana as a dispensary. They have to get it from the tribes until eventually that expires and they can grow it themselves in the middle of Albert Lea. Is that then what?
Yep. The legislation gives tribes a huge head start into the marketplace. And again, that's right up Tim Walz's alley. And now he's negotiating compacts with tribes over marijuana, similar to the gambling compacts we have in this state, which are the worst gambling compacts in the country. They're in perpetuity. They never retire. So we're stuck with them. We get that's a whole other thing. But we're going down the same road with marijuana in terms of them getting a leg up on the market for distribution and growing and even retail. So yeah, for now, that's the only people growing legally in Minnesota are the tribes. Eventually you'll be able to have a growing operation and micro business and a transportation business. There's all kinds of different businesses that are going to be created. And by the way, I'll just say, some people think this is going to be like a boom business, like, oh, this is going to be great, and we're going to help these disadvantaged people with these businesses. The market's, it's not going to be that successful. That's my prediction. The marijuana is no longer a novelty among the states. States all over the country are proving it. So people aren't going to come to Minnesota to get marijuana like they might have in Colorado when it first opened. People are not making huge money. Small businesses are not succeeding. Usually in states that have done this ahead of us, it comes down to one or two big players that dominate the market and they make the money, and they're national marijuana players, retail. And so that's probably how it'll go in Minnesota. So I don't think it's a good business to even invest in or be in. I see some cities are going to do munis, and then in the marijuana industry, they're going to be municipal. Yeah, cities can do that and have that be one of their two. Albert Lea could have taken up one of the licenses themselves.
Wait, did they hire like a city grower? Like
yeah,
what?
Well, they'll have to have a whole thing, just like, well, there's a lot of cities that have municipal liquor stores.
Yeah, I suppose.
You know, and it's, I think it's bad. I think it's dumb.
Yeah, then you just drive to the next city, though. You know, it's like,
yeah,
prices are better at Total Wine. So.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, this is also kind of an issue nationally this week because President Trump said he is considering reclassifying marijuana to a lower federal schedule, which could ease restrictions nationwide. I don't know that. I think this is more of a rumor than anything. I don't know that that's actually something he is going to do, and I don't think he should do it because what I saw was a lot of pushback to that online from people on the right. I think there's certainly a segment of the right that falls into the more libertarian camp, but I think there's a big segment of the right that's realizing we have gone too far in not keeping any kind of social order in our laws and trying to get rid of everything and throwing everything out. I don't know. What do you guys think?
This is so I was having this exact conversation last night, believe it or not.
Yeah. Well, no, everyone is talking about it. And it's interesting
really
to see
trending
people
right now,
kind of come around on me, myself included, of like, well, who cares? Like, yeah, whatever. Adults, whatever. Now that you start to see some of the effects, I really hate it. And I think it is a big mistake.
Yeah, my big take on it is I hate the smell and I don't want to smell it. However we can make that happen,
That's fair.
I'm on board.
Yeah,
Probably don't have time for a full marijuana debate today, but
you could do a marijuana show. You should have Matt Dean, our healthcare policy
I don't want to do a
fellow on
marijuana
it.
show,
Okay,
though.
well,
I just want a quick thought. It's just so, I don't know. People have their opinions for their own internal reasons. Maybe they just want to smoke pot. Maybe I just think everyone's biased in this conversation, and people have a hard time having a fair conversation about the effects of marijuana laws.
Well, I mean, I think that it's a mistake for Minnesota to get in the business. I think we're going to see lots of bad effects of that, as every other state that is legalized it has, in terms of traffic accidents, fatalities, test scores, the youth. I mean, it's all bad. It's not good. The declassification at the federal level, there's two big things involved in that. One of the things we always say is we haven't done enough clinical trials on marijuana as a medicinal use, and that's because it's classified as a illicit drug.
That's
so
interesting.
you can't do the trials, and there's some truth to that. And secondly, what declassification would do at the federal level, it was allow federal banking to participate. So it's very difficult to open a marijuana business because you can't go to your federal bank, your bank down the street, because it's a class 1 drug. So the banks can't participate. So you got to figure out what to do with your money when you make money. Where do you put the money? How do you run a business without your local bank? So it's been a difficult question. There's been solutions that have popped up, but it's difficult. So that would ease that from the business side of it. But overall, I mean, it's a drug that does bad things to people, and we have bad outcomes.
Yeah, I just think you just think of the people who smoke a lot of pot and how are they doing? That's enough for me.
let us know in the comments. Pro weed, anti weed.
Oh boy.
Should we do an episode on
Fight it out.
Yeah.
Fight it out.
Yeah, our audience is going to be split.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
It is a really interesting, discussion to have, just among conservatives, because there is such a wide variety of ways to look at it, and it makes for some good, lively debates. So yeah, let us know in the comments. Seriously, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do a show on it, you should have Matt. Matt knows a lot about this as a legislator dealing in policy, and a healthcare expert.
If we get 10 comments asking for a marijuana episode, we'll do it. That's my deal.
Wow. Okay. I guess we're doing it.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the people want. We are a podcast of the people.
I like it.
Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome.
We're going to kick things over now to Kathryn and I talking with John Hinderaker, our president here at American Experiment, about Trump's efforts out in D.C. to cut down on crime and vagrancy. American Experiment is supported by thousands of individuals like you. To join the movement, go to www.americanexperiment.org and click the yellow donate button. From all of us here, thank you. We are pleased to be joined once again in studio by our fearless leader, John Hinderaker. John, thanks for coming back on the pod.
Always glad to do it, Grace.
We're going to be unpacking, I would say, probably the biggest news story of this week, which is that Trump has taken over DC's National Guard forces, some of the personnel out there, to combat DC's vagrancy and crime and homelessness problems. So David Zimmer has a great piece up right now on AmericanExperiment.org talking about this issue as, of course, a former law enforcement man himself. I'm going to quickly touch on some of the high points in case you've been living under a rock and have missed this. And feel free to chime in, guys, if I'm missing anything. And then we'll ask you, John, some questions, because there's been a lot of criticism floating around on the left, calling this shockingly authoritarianism, fascism.
Well, there's criticism of everything Trump does.
Right.
So that's to be expected.
Yeah. So the White House announced this week a, quote, crime emergency in Washington, D.C., our capital, and laid out a plan to, quote, protect public servants, citizens, and tourists, and ensure the safe functioning of the federal government. It's worth noting, so the order places operational control of the 3,500 officer Metropolitan Police Department with the U.S. Attorney General's office, And then it also directs several hundred National Guard troops to patrol the area. And finally, it calls for hundreds of federal agents from a variety of federal law enforcement agencies to conduct high visibility patrols in the capital city, augmenting those other efforts. And then I want to read a quick direct quote from Zimmer here. He says, I was in D.C. just last week. He was walking around the National Mall area and was surprised by how clean and orderly it was. He says that's a change from when he's been there in recent years under other administrations. However, he says the seedy underbelly of D.C. was quickly exposed as he walked away from that main area. Vagrancy was prevalent, and it became hard to walk a block without being approached for money or having to walk through the smells of urine and feces on the sidewalks. That sounds awful. I feel like I understand why Trump's doing this.
I was in DC for a while, and once I was waiting for a stoplight, it turned green, and I wonder, why isn't the guy in front of me walking? I look down, and he's urinating into the garbage can next to us.
Oh my gosh.
Right in front of me. So I had to go, scoot around you, past the street. And I mean, there's examples like that all over DC to a degree that I haven't seen other places. Just general homelessness everywhere. And yeah, I would say, I don't even know if the word is crime that you can see outright, but antisocial behavior, maybe people, clearly on drugs, things like that.
Well, there is crime. D.C. has the 4th highest homicide rate of any American city. So it is a high crime city. And beyond that, there are thousands of homeless people, which really degrades the quality of life for the reasons that you were just expressing there, Kathryn. And if you go around American cities, it's really striking. Some of them, you got to step over homeless people on the sidewalk. Others, there's no homeless people in sight. And it is really a matter of local law enforcement. You don't have to allow homeless encampments and so forth, people pitching tents under the highway overpass, all that kind of thing. Minneapolis is a good example. Minneapolis was plagued by these homeless encampments. And finally, the city of Minneapolis decided not to take it anymore. And that was largely at the instigation, I think, of our David Zimmer, who actually teamed up with a liberal group where they agreed on the topic of homelessness. There's nothing kind or charitable about allowing these open air drug markets, people camping out, murders being committed, people dying of drug overdoses. That's terrible for everyone. And so the city of Minneapolis has now cleaned up the homeless encampment. So it absolutely can be done, but it requires political will.
Yeah. So I feel like, maybe conservatives in general, no one's really saying this is a bad idea. What Trump's setting out to do, it's a international embarrassment to have our capital city in this state of vagrancy and people walking around on the streets asking for money. The question that I have on my mind is, John, do you think this is the best way that he could have gone about fixing this problem?
Well, I'm not sure what other ways he had at his disposal.
Sure.
There's a provision in the Home Rule Act, which was passed in something like 1973, that specifically allows the president to declare an emergency and take over the D.C. Metro Police Force for up to 30 days. And that's what Trump has done. He's declared an emergency. He's taken over the police force for up to 30 days. We'll see how long it lasts. And then he's done the other things, Grace, that you mentioned. So it looks to me as if he is pulling all of the levers at his disposal. The mayor of D.C., what's her name, Muriel Bowser, has pledged to cooperate with Trump and with the administration in trying to get better law enforcement in the District of Columbia. So we'll see how it turns out. None of this is easy, but if you don't try, you're not going to succeed. And Trump at least is trying.
It's an interesting experiment. Can you clean up a city in 30 days? And my understanding is Congress could extend that amount of time. But for the most part, the only thing he's guaranteed is 30 days. And I don't know if it seems like it'd be hard given the makeup of Congress right now to get that extension. What do you think?
Well, there's nothing coming out of Congress right now. You're absolutely right about that. I suppose one thing Trump could do is when the first 30 days expire, declare another emergency and try to get another 30 days and maybe keep doing that. If he started declaring successive emergencies, undoubtedly that would prompt legal challenges.
So a lot of the pushback came in the form of, I think this Tim Walz tweet sums it up well. He posted on X, "The road to authoritarianism is littered with people telling you you're overreacting." So basically calling Trump an authoritarian. The famous historian podcaster, Dan Carlin, you guys didn't know who I was talking about, but I'm sure we have listeners who do, finally became a biased guy and came out and said, "This is insane, this is crazy, everything I've read about history, this today, what's going on in DC is authoritarianism."
I love how the people who tried to put Donald Trump in prison call him an authoritarian. The people who ordered the raid where they searched his wife's underwear drawer, they call Trump an authoritarian. And I really don't understand that. What he's trying to do is enforce the law.
Yeah.
He's trying to get the crime rate down. He's trying to get the vagrants off the street. There's nothing authoritarian about that. You know, if you look at Article 2 of the Constitution, the fundamental duty of the president is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. That is his job description, and that is what President Trump is trying to do. The main place where you see these charges of authoritarianism is illegal immigration. Well, the greatest affront, the greatest infringement of the rule of law in American history was when Joe Biden allowed and, in fact, invited somewhere between 10 million and 20 million illegal aliens into the United States. That was a grotesque violation of Joe Biden's constitutional duty to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. He deliberately flouted the immigration laws for political purposes. No, that's authoritarian.
Yeah.
When you flout the Constitution, when you violate the Constitution. Barack Obama flouted the Constitution. He gave work permits to tens of thousands of illegal aliens when it was illegal for them to have jobs, illegal for them to be working. Mm-hmm. And he issued them work permits. He lost that case, I believe, 9-0 in the U.S. Supreme Court. It was an obvious infringement of the Constitution. So here's Donald Trump. He comes along trying to carry out his constitutional duty under Article 2 to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And he's trying to clean up the mess that Joe Biden unlawfully left behind. And when he tries to enforce the law, now he's accused of being an authoritarian. I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous.
And is enforcing the law by following the law. I mean, it's so absurd to call it fascism or authoritarianism when, you know, he has the right to declare this 30-day emergency and then use the tools at his disposal. And I understand it's almost, you know, worthless. It's almost a waste of time to argue against people who are calling him these things. But it's worth pointing out for the people who might somehow be on the fence on this issue.
Yeah, and we all have those people in our lives too, I think, don't we? I think the other thing, you know, it's kind of interesting, going back to what you said about illegal immigration, we saw to the Democrat administration really saying, oh, there's nothing we can do about it, clearly lying, but trying to gaslight the public, I think, into believing that this is really too hard. There's too many illegals here already. We can't do anything about it. Time and time again, presidents on both sides of the aisle have used excuses about why they can't get things done. Donald Trump has gotten a lot of stuff done in a short amount of time, and if he can pull this off in DC, I think that'll be another huge, medal that he can wear and say, look what I was able to do when everyone else told you this is impossible.
You know, I think these liberals tend to lose the plot, right? I mean, what's going on here? What's going on here is that the United States of America, the most powerful country in the world, one of the richest countries in the world, has a capital that is dangerous for visitors from the U.S. and from all over the world to come to. We have a capital with the fourth highest murder rate in the United States, with vagrants all over the streets, crime rampant. One of the things that prompted this is when that guy who worked in Doge, may still be working in Doge, I'm not sure, a Big Ball.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That was his
Big
Twitter handle.
Wow,
well,
yeah.
he got the daylights beaten out of him by a gang of juveniles when he tried to interfere to stop a carjacking. It turned out probably to be unwise, but he's trying to be a good citizen. He winds up just getting brutally beaten by these thugs. And I think that's one of the things that pushed Trump kind of over the edge and decided, we've got to do something about this. But what we have is a situation that the American people ought to regard as unacceptable.
Yes.
The American people should look at the condition of Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, which is uniquely under the control of the federal government, by the way. It's not like the state of Maryland or the state of Minnesota or the state of Virginia. D.C. is under the control constitutionally of the federal government. It is their responsibility, and it's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. The American people shouldn't stand for it. The American people should have been demanding for some time that the federal government act to clean up Washington, D.C., and make it a capital that the American people can be proud of. Donald Trump finally is doing that, and I think he should be applauded.
Yeah, it seems like that has been the slogan or the hallmark of his administration, has been coming in and getting all these common sense things done that, makes you wake up and say, wait, they haven't been doing this the last 4 years? Why hasn't this been fixed?
Also, to his credit, he doesn't have to deal with the crime. If he moves around D.C., they sweep everyone off the streets.
Yeah,
you
right.
can't walk outside. You get stuck in buildings. Everyone who's lived in D.C. knows this. You'll get trapped somewhere by some guy, and you're like, great, I'm going to be late because the president's coming.
You can't drive your car either because there'll be a motorcade going down the
So
street.
another thing for Trump's kind of populist message, he does clearly listen to the people who are suffering under this crime, like perhaps big balls, and other, less fortunate individuals who get stuck in these situations when he doesn't even have to deal with it. So another kind of populist win, I think, for him. But my next question is, if he can do this in D.C., don't you think we could use a little bit of this energy in Minneapolis? But this law obviously only applies to D.C., right? So is there anything he can do to help us out in Minneapolis that you know about with the crime we're having here?
Well, it's something I haven't really thought about. I mean, he when they were having riots in Los Angeles, he brought out the National Guard to protect federal property. The National Guard actually played a very limited role in the Los Angeles riots. We don't have riots going on currently in Minneapolis. We have had in the past. I don't really think there's anything that can be done at the federal level. Minneapolis is not one of the highest crime cities in America. The crime is obviously worse than it was in years gone by. It's down a little bit since the peak of 2021 or whatever the high point was. But I don't think there's anything at the federal level that can be done. Crime is an interesting thing because it varies so much. Some places have so much more crime than other places. And in my opinion, a lot of it comes down to two things. Number one is culture. And when you have a culture where, as you described, Kathryn, people think it's A-OK to urinate into a garbage can on the street in front of passersby. At least he used a garbage can, I guess.
Well, it was nice of him. He couldn't get it in the garbage. He's on the side, splashing back.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, now
So
that's enough. So no, but you understand what I'm saying. You understand what I'm saying. When there's a culture that allows these things to happen, this antisocial conduct to happen, and you see it all the time. You see it on one of the reasons nobody rides the trains, the light rail trains in the Twin Cities, is because stuff goes on there that you don't want to see along the lines that you're talking about. One of my sons-in-law is a pilot, and he landed at the airport, and he was going to take the train one stop to the free parking lot at Terminal B, which is where those folks tended to park their cars. It's late at night. He waits for the train to arrive. The train pulls up, the doors open, and there's three hobos sitting in this car. They have built a fire on the floor of the car. It's in the winter. They are warming themselves over a fire that they have built on the floor of the train car. And he looks at them for a few seconds and lets the doors close and says, I think I'm not going to be taking this train anymore. But this is what happens when you allow standards to slip, when you have a culture where little by little, more and more antisocial behavior it goes unpunished and is considered to be more or less acceptable. At the end of the day, it comes down to what people are willing to tolerate, what people are willing to stand for. And if the people in a given city are determined to get crime under control, they can do it. They can elect people who will carry out their will, who will in fact get crime under control. And it hasn't always been this way. Big American cities, there have been times when they've been quite safe. And then they get dangerous again. We saw that with New York City, during the Giuliani era, and he got elected because of the rampant crime in New York City. And there was a time when New York was amazingly safe. It was safer at that time than Minneapolis, which was much safer then than it is now. And families with small children, you may remember this, Kathryn, could walk around in the evening on Manhattan, completely without fear, because the city had gotten the crime problem under control. I also remember when it was rampant, when you'd be stopped because you're part of traffic converging to go into a tunnel, and a squeegee man would come around. And you didn't ask for the squeegee man, but he'd come around and he would squeegee your windshield and then hold out his hand like, you better give me $10 or I'm going to break your windshield or something, whatever the threat was. And these squeegee men, were a plague. Well, if you have a city government that is determined to end serious crime, but also this kind of lower level harassment, it absolutely can be done. But you have to be determined to do it.
Yeah, it has been interesting watching people try to push back on, the narrative that DC is overrun and they have a crime problem. And they say, oh, well, their crime rates have been dropping in the last few years. And you say, okay, well, you go back 5 or 6 years and they were way lower than they are now. But people are reacting to the new normal that we've established. And we saw that exact same thing play out in Minneapolis over the last few years.
Same thing. And David Zimmer keeps pointing this out. They'll say, oh, crime is down 11% or whatever. Well, yeah, it went up by 140% right. And then it came down by 11%. But, this is not the Minneapolis that I lived in years and years ago.
Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for unpacking this breaking news story with us. It's always a pleasure. Any final thoughts on the story that's unfolding?
Well, not really, Grace. I mean, we'll see what happens. He's only got 30 days. Maybe he tries another declaration of emergency. We'll see how that all plays out. I think for now, above all, Trump is trying to exert some leadership, which is a fundamental part of a president's job, is to show leadership. And he looks at what's happening in D.C. and he says, this isn't good enough. The American people deserve a safer, cleaner, better capital than this, and he's going to do what he can to try to make that happen. And hopefully, when you're a leader, hopefully some other people follow who can help to get the job done.
Yeah. He also cares about aesthetics, which I really appreciate about him. He's like, we have all these visitors and the city doesn't look good. There's been some very funny exchanges too with him doing some updates in the White House with the reporters. We didn't pull any, but you should go check him out. He's very funny. I mean, he cares about how things look and how we present ourselves as a country. And I've never, known of anyone in a position like his that really cared about that, which I appreciate.
It's very refreshing. Thank you again, John, for coming on.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you so much to everyone who made it all the way to the end and tuned in to today's episode.
Yeah, and remember our question of the day from earlier? Should we do a full episode on marijuana? Or is everyone over it? I don't know that we're moving the needle on this issue. I feel like people are pretty, they know what they believe and they believe it, but maybe not.
But would you want to see
it? We can talk about both sides, policy, how it's going in Minnesota, give you an update. It's a disaster. What more?
Let us know in the comments if that's content you want to see. And let us know your stance on the legalization of marijuana. And as always, remember, please, to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit download if you're listening on Spotify, turn on notifications, do all those things to help us reach more people. We'll see you next week.